Okay, then item C we'll move on to are the WASB resolutions that will be brought forward this week at the state convention that we're attending. Mrs. Artie did post these online, and of course we were able to go through and review them and any discussion, and you did go through with your administrative staff and discuss them and put your recommendations forward on them as you have it online. There were a few that were a little inconclusive, and were there any that anyone wanted to bring out? We'll kind of go through these, I suppose, a little bit and just...
Yeah, any perhaps that you have questions on, and I certainly can speak to the ones that were not 100% convinced that are necessary.
I have a problem with Resolution 1103, unfunded mandates, although I certainly believe that no additional mandate should be added without appropriate funding provided by either the state or federal government. I think that there are some extraordinarily valuable programs that have become established in districts since 1980, when many of those mandates were first introduced. I'll speak to one, and that's the mandate that requires minimum number of physical education minutes during the day. Another one that I would have a grave concern about would be the mandate that requires programming for talented and gifted students. These have become established elements in our district and many others. However, we are facing some critical budget issues. I just feel it would be a shame to begin looking at programs such as those, which can become very easy targets to look at. I think we could, in essence, gut core programs that go beyond simply academics in our district or others without some of those mandates. And so although I think we are all concerned about the dollars we spend, I'm not so sure that this resolution, if it were implemented, would not make it very easy for some very fine programs that meet the needs of vulnerable students to be lost. So I would not personally support that resolution.
In understanding how it's worded, it's saying that any requirement that's placed on us that doesn't come with 100% funding would be rejected.
As I'm reading that, yeah.
No, I wouldn't support that either. Why? Because this is coming from administration as a go. What was the rationale for the go on it?
Well, I think it's just the idea that, it says, or can be implemented at no cost. I mean, I think there are programs, for instance, the bullying initiative that was approved last year. We're okay with saying if there's a new mandate, provided we can do it within the constraints of what we're dealing with. I do notice that they crossed out the word new.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I don't think we're looking at eliminating any of those key things that we have in place currently, but we are concerned about the addition of more and more mandates. I think a good example is the physicals, paying for physicals for all new staff people. That's going to be very costly for our district, and I think the legislature needs to get the message too that if they are going to be making requirements that cost a considerable amount of money, they need to provide some funding for those things.
And I would have no problem if the word new were not deleted.
It's odd.
It's deleting the word
right.
new.
And in the rationale, it specifically says applies to new state mandates.
But the very fact that that word
right.
new is crossed out gives me grave mm-hmm. concerns. And I'm not so sure that in this district, working with this board, that we would see a gutting of programs that are now considered a critical part of this district. But I'm not so sure that that would be true throughout the rest of the state. And many of those programs were hard fought for from 1980 to 1990. And it would be a shame for the children of Wisconsin to lose those.
I think part of it, though, too, is we we are going to have to take a look at what we're doing, and there may be a few that are mandated, that are not mandated, that are just going to have to maybe reconsider. And I guess when, Cindy and I talked about this, I think we looked at the word implementation as if they're already implemented, we're not going back, whereas when you're implementing something that's already been implemented. So I think there's a variety of ways you can read into this, and I think there's got to be a lot of discussion about it. I think it'd be very difficult to say yay or nay to this, but I think as we looked at it, we were kind of on board with it. But I would agree with what you're saying, Mary Ellen, that we got to be very, very careful that we don't undo. And those words gutted are the exact words I've been using at different buildings the last week and a half.
And many of these mandates go way back to the initiative in the 1980s with what were called the 13 standards. And they then later became mandates. And I totally agree that it's been very easy to keep adding new mandates. But there are things that are mandated that are, I believe, critical to education in Wisconsin. And they might not have happened without those mandates.
I struggle with new being taken out, and also with, I think if we receive mandates, we have to receive some funding to, but I don't know if it'll always have to be 100%. I don't think it's tied to that number. There may be a sliding scale that we can work within. I struggle with the alls or the nones. That makes it too hard for us to do our job.
I think there needs to be some real serious discussion, and again, the word new, I think, is critical.
Okay.
There will probably be some very good discussion on that
would
one.
bet.
And I'm sure the word new is going to be asked to be put back in by some groups. There's always a lot of discussion on each of these resolutions and the exact wording.
Right, and again, I think in this particular instance, it had more to do with those mandates that were related to the safety and health as was stated in the rationale. Those type of arrangements. So in fact, the discussion might go to expand on the actual language, so there may be an amendment during committee in regards to stating, okay, we're talking about mandates that are related to safety and health and the specific funding.
But certainly that wording needs to be changed.
Right, not dealing with actual curriculum or the actual education of students. I think they're worried about these peripheral type mandates that come associated with the school operations. And so maybe, who is our... Deb? Okay, then maybe that's what you want to watch. Is that...
I think one of them that was really, there are two of them that I can talk about.